they're pretty chilled.
So our history is that small little plots of land up and down the valley. Over the years, some families have put those plots together to create bigger parcels, and you'll see some of that when you're out and around in the next few days. But to find a piece of land this size that's suitable for planting grapes was a real big challenge. This whole parcel is 320 acres. Ultimately, we will have between 60 and 80 acres planted on this site. As you can see, it goes all the way up the hill here. So we have the highest altitude vineyard in BC at 680 meters above sea level over there.
It's like a natural amphitheatre, isn't it?
Yes. So part of what we did was we couldn't move any of the soil more than 6 inches up or down when we were contouring and getting each vineyard plot ready.
When you say you couldn't,
that was Pedro's rule.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. And we also wanted to leave wildlife corridors. As I've explained, we have bear, cougar, coyote, marmots, Matt's favorite. And so we really wanted to make sure that we kept area for those animals to still roam on this property because it was their home and we've imposed ourselves on them. We put in a little lake here, so you'll see that there's been a return of birds and wildlife to this property as a result of that pond going in. So basically what we started out with planting is in this block, Pinot Noir. Then we've added Chardonnay and Riesling, and coming up will be Gamay and Shannon. And then we'll see where we go from there. In addition to the vineyards, we have 8 acres of organic vegetables, and that is all farmed by Thomas, and basically those vegetables go to farmers markets and restaurants up and down the valley. So wherever the dogs are, that gets moved, and it's actually bigger than my bedroom home.
We're running a regime at the moment. You'll see these piles down here, which we're screening a little bit of the indigenous topsoils and sand in with compost, and actually spreading it twice a year as a 9-inch wide by 1-inch deep strip to start building an upper layer in these soils. And what we're starting to see is, or hopefully over time, is these plants less reliant on us for external influence, which is to say water, food of any sort. And even at the moment, we just basically, apart from the compost itself, we're just feeding these vines with seaweed on a foliar basis rather than spreading stuff across the vineyard. And my philosophy, I guess, more or less with this is you're trying to preserve time and place, and which sounds kind of cliche, but I mean, if there's one thing we do, I guess it's take time, place, put it into a bottle using grapes and send it into the future. So invariably we're messengers. It's how you interpret the message is really the question. So it being virgin land, and you're trying to assist these plants to be the best they possibly can, but still taste like this and this, I guess. So as minimal as an influence as we need to provide to keep them happy and healthy. I mean, for myself, using things like seaweed, which is more or less feeding plants, you know, rather than the sort of conventional ethos of throwing petroleum-based fertilizers. I mean, the old analogy of you're feeding at a granola bar rather than a slushy is really a thing. These plants are slowly but surely more drought tolerant, just generally more climatically tolerant, less water required to keep them happy and healthy.
We'll ferment. I'll do the same juice every year. I'll pick a different variety, and we go stainless, concrete, barrel stuff. So obviously barrel stuff. Stainless is very pure, very linear, really focused acidity. Concrete varietal typicity may decrease slightly, but the layers of complexity and the texture and the mouthfeel is through the roof, and it's always the better wine of the three. So yeah, it's all of everything that we're doing at Haywire for me is about texture. Bone dry wines with a lot of texture and a lot of richness. So
you'll see, I was saying in the car on the way up that Alberto and Pedro obviously have been very influential on what we do here. Pedro calls the soil matter here volcanic vomit. And if you look behind, you'll see some giant rocks in a pile. Those are called erratics, and essentially they're all over this property, and we don't move them, we just work around them. But the soil matter changes from 100 meters to 100 meters. When we were designing this vineyard, and I like to use the word design because when we planted our first vineyard, we just did everything one way. And so now in this particular vineyard, every block has its own program. So there'll be different rootstock, different clones, different positioning of the vineyard, and so everything is sort of dialed in a very planned way. We dug 100 pits around the property, 8 feet deep, and if you've ever been to Chile, you've seen the calicatas, and Pedro leaps in with a little tool and he analyzes the soil structure, and that dictates what we will plant where. We've been sticking to his plan more or less. There'll be a few things that we change. For example, he didn't want us to plant the bottom part of this block, but we have, and we use that for sparkling wine. Concrete. We've got him now.
You know the millions?
Yeah, exactly.
I would love to borrow this thing or pay a winemaker to just draw what is a million.
So I was doing a bunch of cleaning and such, but 7 5,000 litres, 7 3,000 litres. So the whole concept is to ferment 5 tons of reds in the bottom, press them into the top, and store it. Total for the whole facility, so 50,000 cases go through this facility, half for ourselves, half 11 different clients at this point.
So you guys the biggest bubble producers in British Columbia?
No.
No.
Sumac and